What happens when Alice Cooper stops singing about monsters, guillotines, and horror movies, and instead turns his attention to the real world around us? Could that actually make his music even darker and more disturbing? That's a question I want to explore today, and by the end of the video, we will see why Brutal Planet might be one of the most important Alice Cooper albums of his entire career. Before I get into the album itself, I want to briefly talk about my personal connection to Brutal Planet. I bought this sometimes around 2008. I was at a used record shop digging through CD bins like I usually did back then, and I come across this copy of Brutal Planet by Alice Cooper. At the time, I honestly had never heard of the album. The CD was only about $2, but it didn't have a case or booklet. It just came like this, and that's why my copy looks like this. But still, for $2, I had nothing to lose. It was a random purchase that turned into something much bigger. Over the years, Brutal Planet became one of my favorite Alice Cooper albums. In fact, it's easily my favorite Alice Cooper album of the new millennium. Every time I revisit it, I'm reminded of how bold and unapologetic it is. So some background on the album. Brutal Planet was released on June 6th, 2000. It's Alice Cooper's 21st studio album overall, and his 14th as a solo artist. It also arrived after a 6-year gap following The Last Temptation in 1994, which at that point was the longest break between studio albums in his career. This album is widely viewed as the peak of Alice Cooper's so-called metal phase, or industrial phase, if you want to call it that. It's a record where he fully committed to a modern, heavy sound while still keeping his identity intact. The album was co-produced and written by Bob Marlette, and from the very first track, it's obvious it's not classic 70s Alice. It's not glam rock or glam metal Alice either. It's something heavier, colder, and more aggressive. Musically, Brutal Planet dives headfirst into industrial metal and nu metal territory. Guitars are heavily downtuned, often in drop C sharp, and it gives the album a thick, crushing weight. Production has a mechanical, almost militaristic feel to it. Many critics have compared the sound to bands like Ministry, but without relying heavily on the samples. At the same time, the album was clearly competing with heavy artists of the era like Marilyn Manson and Rob Zombie. So what's interesting with that is that those are the artists who were inspired by Alice Cooper back in the day, his theatrical blueprint, and now Alice is being influenced from what they're doing. So I thought that's cool. One of the album's strongest musical traits is its use of contrast. You often hear brutally heavy riffs paired with surprisingly melodic or even angelic choruses. That balance keeps the songs memorable and prevents the heaviness from becoming monotonous. Lyrically, this album represents one of the biggest shifts in Alice Cooper's career. Instead of supernatural villains and shock rock characters, Brutal Planet focuses on what Alice himself called social fiction. He said that watching news channels like CNN inspired the album because real-world events were far more horrifying than anything he could come up with on stage. The album tackled school violence, war, greed, domestic abuse, famine, and dehumanization. Because of that, Brutal Planet might actually be one of the scariest albums Alice Cooper has ever made. Not because it's fictional, but because it's real. So we're going to go track by track. Now, the album opens with Brutal Planet. The title track, it sets the tone perfectly. Musically, it's a heavy, militaristic metal march with pounding riffs and an almost ethereal chorus. There's a Metallica-like weight to it. Lyrically, Alice runs through humanity's fall from grace, starting with Adam and Eve and ending with a world destroyed by its own systems of judgment and control. It's a bleak introduction, but an incredibly effective one. Wicked Young Man is one of the darkest moments on the album. The rhythms are tense and militaristic, reinforcing the instability of the song's subject. Inspired by the Columbine tragedy, lyrics address school shootings and neo-Nazism. Alice pushes back against the idea that music or movies are to blame, suggesting that people are driven by pure evil. It's uncomfortable, but intentionally so. Sanctuary is one of the more upbeat and energetic tracks, often compared to Rob Zombie's style. It feels almost fun on the surface, but lyrically it's about depression, isolation, and the illusion of safety. It reflects the endless cycle of modern life and the false comfort of retreating into your own space. Blow Me a Kiss slows things down considerably. Guitars are minimal. Alice's vocals are soft and almost hypnotic. Lyrics deal with hate crimes, prejudice, and psychopathy, but they're delivered in a calm, unsettling way. It forces you to listen closely and to think deeply about what's being said. Eat Some More is one of the heaviest tracks on the album. The nu metal influence is strong here with massive riffs and a brutal groove. Lyrically, Alice highlights the irony of starvation and famine in parts of the world, while others waste enormous amounts of food. It's angry, sarcastic, and extremely effective. Pick Up the Bones is a war ballad that starts quietly with acoustic guitar and wind effects before exploding into a massive, emotional, heavy section. Song focuses on the aftermath of war and genocide, the silence, death, and devastation left behind, one of the most powerful moments on the album. Pessimistic is a track built around a creepy, unsettling riff. Alice's vocals are intense and cynical. Lyrically, it's written from the perspective of someone who sees the world as a living hell. There's no hope there, just bitterness. In other words, a pessimist. Gimme was one of the singles. It opens with an electronic beat before launching into heavy guitar riffs. Alice adopts a sinister, almost devilish vocal delivery. It's a morality play about greed and temptation, with the devil offering fame, money, and power at a cost. It's clever, catchy, and classic Alice in a modern setting. It's the Little Things is one of the more straightforward hard rock tracks on the album and avoids most industrial effects. Lyrically, it's darkly humorous, listing everyday annoyances that slowly drive people insane. It's a much-needed moment of levity. Take It Like a Woman is the album's ballad, built around a piano melody. Musically, it's more restrained than the rest of the record. Lyrics deal with domestic violence and abuse, serving as a thematic update to Only Women Bleed from 1975. The subject matter is heavy, serious, and handled respectfully. The album closes with Cold Machines. It's a pounding, mechanical riff that strongly resembles the industrial sound popular at the time. Lyrics paint a dystopian picture of a world where humans have become cold, emotionless machines, passing each other without connection. It's a chilling way to end the album, almost prophetic, considering this album came out 25 years ago and now we have AI and all that. But there's also a bonus track. It's called Can't Sleep, Clowns Will Eat Me. It's about scary clowns. It's fast, energetic, it's very metal, and it's included on some of the international editions. It's not on this particular CD. I think it's on the Japanese and Australian editions, but it's a cool song. I wanted to mention it. But now, my final thoughts. Back to the question I asked at the beginning, what happens when Alice Cooper turns his focus from fictional horror to real-world evil? The answer is Brutal Planet, an album. It's heavier, darker, and more unsettling because it's real. The record proved Alice Cooper could evolve with the times without losing his identity. Instead of chasing trends, he absorbed them and made them his own. For me, it's not just the best Alice Cooper album of the 2000s, it's one of his strongest post-70s releases overall. My score is going to be 10 out of 10. If you enjoyed this review, check out this playlist of all the different Alice Cooper album reviews. That's appearing on your screen right now. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments what you think of Brutal Planet. Is it underrated? Is it one of his best? Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.